am a disciple of Jesus Christ. I won't look back.
But you've got unreconciled relationships. You're fighting. You need to break it up. And if you humble yourself and you break it up, He's going to lift you up in honor.
In the LBK, yeah, PPA in the
How we doing downtown? If we haven't met yet, my name is Tyler. I'm the group's pastor here at Experience Life. So what does that mean? It means that I work with all of our small groups, our life transformation groups. I work with some of our best people here at Experience Life. If you're not in a group, you need to get in a group because our groups are amazing. So that's my quick plug. Well, hey, this morning, I just want to ask a quick question. How many of you love movies? How many of you love movies? Man, yeah, I love movies. I think the thing about movies that I love is that they make you feel something. They move you somewhere. And I love this quote. It's by this famous director, Martin Scorsese. He says this. He says, movies touch our hearts and awaken our vision. They change the way we see things. They take us to other places and they open doors in our minds. See, the thing about movies is they take you somewhere. It's why the movie industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry every year. See, it's more than just telling you information. It's about taking you somewhere. Because if it was simply about information, you would never watch the same movie again. Once you've seen a movie once, you know what's going to happen. But I don't know about you, but there's certain movies that I watch over and over and over again. Not because I don't know what's going to happen. It's because of what it makes me feel, where it takes me. And the thing about stories that I think or movies that make them so powerful is that at the core, they're just great stories. Because there's power in stories. Stories connect deeper than mere information. Let me give you an example. See, I can tell you information. I can tell you that growing up, I had a younger brother. He's 2.5 years younger than me. His name's Wesley. We were super competitive and we fought all the time. Like, I can give you information. That probably doesn't do anything for you. It doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't move you anywhere. It just gives you some information. Or I can tell you a story. I can tell you about, I was probably in about the 5th grade, so that meant my brother was about in the 2nd grade, and it was one summer. And so we were at home by ourselves, and we had a babysitter. And like I said, we were super competitive, and so we competed in everything. And so what that meant for my brother is, any time that we played anything, he had to play. He had no choice, right? But we did not take it easy on my younger brother. I was not the brother that was like looking out for him and making sure he was okay. It's just not the way it was at our house. So if we played football, he got hit like everyone else. If we played basketball, we were trying to swat his shot across the street. Like, that's just the way it was. Well, one day, we go downstairs to our basement and we have these video games set up. And since we were super competitive, I had a friend over and we set up this tournament. So we're playing video games, and what ends up happening, remember I'm 2.5 years older than him, so of course I'm better at everything, right? I mean, older brothers just know that. So I'm destroying him in this video game. Well, at the end of the game, he's pretty frustrated because no one likes to lose, right? And he lost. But he's not too terribly frustrated because he has like another opportunity to win. Because he's going to play my friend Houston. Well, the game starts going, and kind of the same thing starts to happen. And I do what all good brothers do. I start talking trash. I'm like, dude, you are terrible at this game. This is unbelievable. You should never be able to play this game again. And I am just getting at him. Well, he's getting more and more frustrated. And then the game ends, and he loses. And he loses his mind. He throws the controller down, and he stares at me and my friend, and he goes, I hate both of you. You're both cheaters. At which point you might think, oh, maybe I've gone too far. Maybe I should back off of them. No, that's not who I am. That's just not going to happen. And so I began to press into him more. He's like, dude, you're a baby. Quit crying. Do we need to go get mom? We're just unbelievably ruthless to him. And he's probably in about the second grade. Well, then it goes from like really funny for me and my friend to terrifying. Because my brother starts looking for a weapon. He's about to even the odds. And what he finds is this brass duck. I don't know why my parents had this, but at some point it was cool, I guess. And it's like this 5-pound brass duck. And he picks it up and he puts it over his head and he goes, I'm going to kill you. And he had murder in his eyes. Okay, I believe him. So me and my friend, we bolt. We don't stick around to talk to him. We go up the stairs, out the front door, and down the street. But my brother's not about to let us off that easy. So he does the same thing. Up the stairs, out the front door, and down the street. Well, because we were so young, and it was in the summer, we had a babysitter. And the babysitter hears all this commotion. She goes to the front door. What is going on? And just about the time she gets to the front door, she sees my brother with the duck over his head going, I'm going to kill you, running down the street. And so she takes off. So here's the image. It's me and my friend Houston running for our lives. 10 yards behind us is my brother Wesley running to kill us. And 10 yards behind him is the babysitter running for her job. Right? Luckily, our babysitter was a lot faster than my second grade brother. She caught up to him first, drugged him home, and eventually he calmed down. And I think we're okay today. But see, that's a story. It takes you somewhere. It makes you feel something. It gives you a vision for what I'm talking about. And I think that's the power of a story. It does more than just give you information. So this morning what I want to do is I want us to talk about the power of story. But more specifically, the power of your story and my story. So if you have your Bible, we're going to be in James chapter 5. It's also going to be up here on the screen, so if you want to look at it there. Also, if you don't have a Bible, we'd love to give you one. We have free yellow Bibles. They're right outside these doors on these towers. They're also at the VIP Center. We'd love for you to have that. So James chapter 5, we're going to be starting in verse 19. And it just says this. It says, my dear brothers and sisters, if someone among you wanders away from the truth and is brought back, you can be sure that whoever brings the sinner back from wandering will save that person from death and bring about the forgiveness of many sins. So let's look at this passage. Let's look at the first verse. It talks about if someone among you wanders away from the truth. And I read this the first time, and I'm going, truth. What is the author talking about when he talks about truth? Because I don't know about you, but whenever I think about the truth, I think of it as an idea, as a thought. It's information, it's a philosophy. But is that what the author is actually talking about? Because in another part of the Bible, Jesus says truth is something else. It's in John 14:6, and I just want to read it to you. It'll be up here on the screen. It says, Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So according to Jesus, truth is not information, it's not a thought, it's not an idea. Truth is a person. Truth is a person, and his name is Jesus. So in this passage, when it talks about someone wandering away from the truth, it's not talking about someone having a new idea, someone following a new philosophy. It's talking about someone who has moved away from Jesus. Someone who has wandered from the truth of Jesus. See, that's why it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal because it's not just an idea. It's a person that they moved from. And that's why it's so heartbreaking. So now that we understand what we're talking about when it talks about the truth, that it's not just an idea, it's not just a thought, it's a person, I think that will form the rest of our conversation. So let's look at the second part of this verse. Second part, it says something like this. It says, you can be sure whoever brings a sinner back from wandering will save that person from death. So the second part of this verse, it seems to indicate that you and I, we are called to help bring people who have wandered from Jesus back to him. Now, I don't know about you, but I hear that and I get a little uncomfortable. I'm like, ooh, I don't really like that, right? Because it makes me immediately go to, how in the world do I do that? How do I help someone who has moved away from Jesus? How do I help them come back? And I think our problem is we normally think there's only two options. The first option is super aggressive. I call it the bullhorn method. Where you just go to someone, you tell them every mistake they've ever made, how they're screwing up. You say, hey, tomorrow you need to change. Like, that's a method you can use. The problem with it is, obviously you might not have many friends after you use it, right? Like, you may not have a lot of people that like you. So that's one method. But then there's another method, and I think this is the method that most of us try to use. It's the method where we don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable. We don't want to ruffle any feathers. We don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. And so what we do is we let someone who has wandered just figure it out on their own. The problem with this approach is it's really hard to say that you're loving someone well if you're willing to just let them wander aimlessly forever. So the question becomes, if I don't want to just yell at people and lose friends, but I also don't want to just avoid the whole issue and not love the people who love it, is there another way? Is there a middle way? And I think it comes back to this idea of story. Because the one thing that every follower of Jesus has is your story. Your story of when you committed your life to Christ, and your story of how God is working in your life now. See, the amazing thing is, you may not be able to tell me even one verse in the Bible from memory. But you can tell me about the day you committed your life to Christ. You may not be able to tell me the difference between 1 John and regular John. But you can tell me what God is doing in your life right now. See, because your story, it's the one thing that we can all share with people who have wandered from God. It's the one thing that we can all share. And here's the great thing about your story. Your story doesn't just end at one day. It doesn't end the day you commit your life to Christ. It continues to grow. In the same way that your life didn't end the day you committed your life to Christ. See, anytime that we share our story, it definitely needs to include when we committed our life to Christ. It's such a major part of our story. It's just our story shouldn't stop there. It'd be kind of like this. Kind of like if you started a movie and you watched it for 30 minutes and you're just starting to understand the characters and what's happening, and then you just stop it. You never watch the end. That's what it would be like to share your story of committing your life to Christ without sharing the whole story. So, what would it look like to share our story? Because here's my suspicion. My suspicion is that some of you, we've shared our story with someone who has wandered before. And we've shared it, and it hasn't been very effective. And here's what I'm curious about. I wonder if the reason it wasn't very effective is because all the action was years ago in the past. Because as followers of Jesus, we need fresh encounters with Jesus daily, where our story becomes stale and lifeless. Because a story of life in the past without evidence of life now, it's powerless. A story where God moved in incredible ways years ago in the past, without a story of how God is still alive and moving in you now, it's powerless. So what would it look like to share your story? Let me share with you my story. See, I grew up going to church. Went to church every Sunday, every Wednesday, every time there was an event, we were there. But for me, church was something that was just, if I'm honest, pretty boring. And it was irrelevant to the rest of my life. It's just something you did on Sunday and Wednesday, showed up, did it, then you went about your life. So that's how I kind of grew up. In about the 4th grade, I committed my life to Christ. I knew what that meant. I knew I was sinful. I knew I needed someone to forgive me. And I was willing to follow Jesus wherever he wanted me to go. But my problem was this. I thought that all God wanted from me was to show up on Sunday and Wednesday and then just try not to do bad things throughout the week. That's what I thought he wanted from me. And the problem with this view is that it's really limited, right? That's hard to build your life around, just coming 2 days a week and trying not to do bad things. It's not a very big vision. So what ended up happening is I was really bored. It's not that church was bad, it was irrelevant. But that all changed for me going into my high school freshman year. Went to this event with 500 other high school students. And I remember sitting in a gathering similar to this. I don't remember if it was a speaker or if it was the band. I don't remember what it was, but it was like all of a sudden it just clicked. And I began to understand that God was calling me to something much more than just not doing bad things. See, I began to understand that God had a mission for me. And his mission was to help connect people that didn't know him with him. And that was a mission that was worthy of my life. That was a mission that wasn't just about showing up somewhere a few days a week and trying not to do bad things. It was a mission worth living. And I knew in that moment I would do whatever I had to be a part of that. See, because it was in that moment that I realized that Jesus was wanting me to be on his team. I didn't know why. It didn't make sense. But I knew if Jesus wanted me on his team, I didn't want to drop the ball. I didn't just want to be a guy on the sideline. I wanted to be a go-to guy. I wanted to be someone he could count on. Because I grew up playing sports. I grew up playing sports, and I knew that on every team I've ever been a part of, that there's a few people that you turn to when things are tough. When you need a basket, when you need to stop. And I wanted to be someone Jesus could count on. I wanted that for my life. So, I stopped skipping church. I got really serious about reading my Bible. I read the entire Bible in about 8 months. And then I began to see how my faith was being lived out on a daily basis. It started to affect my relationships. It affected the way that I treated my brother. He no longer wanted to chase me down the street with a duck, right? It started to influence the way that I treated my parents and my friends. It changed the decisions I was making, the things I was willing to be a part of. See, it changed my life. And it changed the direction that I was going. But it didn't just change me once. It's continuing to change me. See, because a few months ago here at the downtown campus, we had something come in called the Heart Gallery. We've had the Heart Gallery several different times here at eLife. So what we do is we bring in these portraits, they're professional portraits of kids in the foster care system. And we put them all around our downtown and southwest campus with the hope that someone would see these amazing kids and want to provide a forever home for them. Well, let me be honest with you. We have this thing almost every year. And I've seen it every year, and I've been inspired by it, but it never moved me. But that changed this year. So they set up this Heart Gallery here in the lobby at downtown, and almost immediately, I began to notice this one boy. And it was like every time I came to a weekend gathering, every time I came to a prayer gathering, every time I worked here at downtown, I noticed this one kid. And at first, it was just noticing him. But then the days kept going, and I started to have something happen in my life that I'd never had before. I started to imagine, what would it look like if I was the person that provided the forever home for him? What would it look like if he came to my home and me and my wife were his parents? And I began to imagine this every time I came to the downtown campus. Well, after a few weeks, I went to my wife and said, hey, I don't know what this is. I know we don't have a plan for this, but I think we should at least pray. So we started praying, and it's amazing the way that God begins to change your heart. Over the course of a few days, we decided that this is what we wanted to do. That more than anything, this is what God was calling us to do. And he began to change our hearts and our desires. But the thing is, change just doesn't happen all at once. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but change is not easy. And I'll be honest with you, there were a lot of reasons why we could come up with why this was a terrible idea. Let me tell you a few. First of all, this kid, it wasn't a young child. He was a 14 or 15-year-old boy. And so me and my wife, we get to thinking about it, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. We don't have any kids of our own. We have no idea how to be parents, okay? And most people, you get to figure it out on a toddler, right? You can just figure it out along the way. We were going to be jumping into the deep end and be parents to a teenager. And I remember going, God, this is a terrible idea. Certainly you wouldn't want us to do this. And we could just sense him going, no, keep going. Keep going, I'm going to be with you. So then we come up with another idea. We're like, well, God, isn't it going to be like really awkward? Because like, think about this. I'm not that old, all right? So this child, if he's 14, 15, he's going to look more like my brother, or if we have a girl, my sister, than my son or daughter. Like, it's just going to be weird and awkward for everyone. And so I remember going, God, certainly you don't want us to do it. He's like, no, not a good enough reason. Keep going. Heart began to change. And then finally, I remember just sitting down and going, God, am I really what's best for this child? I don't have any idea what to do. And me and my wife began to get this sense that God was saying, hey, whatever you go through, I'm there. See, and this is the change that I've come to. I've come to believe I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what my family's going to look like, but I've become convinced of this. That God is going to change me and my wife into whoever we need to be for this child. So, as of today, my wife and I were in the final stages of getting licensed to be foster parents. So, we have a few more things, and God willing, we'll have an older child in our home within the next month or month and a half, with the hope of adopting them here in the near future. See, your story of what God is doing in your life now, it proves to people that Jesus is still alive and working in you now. See, it wasn't just a one-time thing when Jesus changed me. Jesus is changing me all the time. He's continuing to do that. So here's my question to you today. Do you know someone who has wandered from the truth? Not an idea, not a thought, someone who has wandered from Jesus. And if you do, I want to challenge you this week to share your story with them. Your story of when you first decided to give God everything you had. And your story of what God is doing in your life now. Give them a vision of what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus. Move them to the place where they can meet the person who can change them too. Because our story, it's the one thing that we can all share with people who have wandered from the truth. Let's pray. Father, I pray that today you would help us to know that you are the truth. Father, I pray that you would guide us as we share our stories with people that we love. Father, I pray that we would be able to connect with them because of what you are doing in our lives now. That it wouldn't just be an encounter that happened years ago in the past, but it's something that happened in the past and that you're continuing to do today. Father, we love you. And we want to be faithful to follow you, to bring people who have wandered from you back. We love you. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Thanks for checking out one of our messages today. For more information about our church or to watch other messages, you can go to our website at experiencelife.now.com. Let us know if we can serve you in any way, and we hope to see you real soon.